Tethered, Decay, and Fastened, Renewal by CozyEarth. Read by Supernova Podfic. Chapter 15 Fuzzy. Summary. Danny feels a little fuzzy. Danny's body feels like he's about to burst. He's not sure what happened. One moment, he's enjoying the walk back with Jason. The next thing he knows, he's hit with this feeling like a brick wall. He feels euphoric. The thrill and sense of excitement flow through his body like a river of power. One hot spot threads to another before it takes him over. His core is vibrating with the increased energy. His senses are on overdrive. It's as if he can feel the whole city's emotions, and Danny recognizes the taste. Fear. He's feeling the fear around him, and his weak core is feeding off it. Time feels like it was slowing Time felt like it was slowing down, and Danny was moving too fast. He feels floaty. He might be floating. He's not too sure anymore. He's never fed off this much fear before. All ghosts have the ability to feed off strong emotions when ectoplasm isn't available, fear being the most common. Danny himself has done it before when in a tight pinch, but this was different. It felt artificial. His core was having issues filtering it, and it was making Danny feel fuzzy. He stopped walking when he began to hear screaming. The sudden sound was both far away and way too loud at the same time. People were running and pushing past him, panic feeding into the fear like a tidal wave, but he just phased through them and stayed where he was. There was this sensation itching him just under the skin. It was hard to hear over the noise and chaos, but there was something else that was catching Danny's attention. A ringing, high-pitched electrical buzz was filling the air, and it was annoying Danny. Danny tilted his head, trying to focus on the fuzzy feeling taking over his body, closing his eyes to find the source of his annoyance. It took a moment, Danny's core distracted by feeling the stress rolling off of Jason. Danny smiled and patted his bondmate's arm, trying his best to send soothing and comfort. He'd go and deal with this for Jason. Jason was his to take care of, after all. Jason was good. Jason didn't need more stress. His core rolled in the need to take care of and protect the taller man. After finally pinpointing where the buzzing was, Danny took off. It didn't take long to find the source. It was an ugly machine. It was a clunky and poorly constructed Frankenstein of a thing. Safe to say he wasn't impressed. Danny scrunched up his nose at the nasty smells and fumes coming off from it, smoke that tasted like the artificial fear covered the area. He found the monstrosity. It made his skin tingle. Breaking the machine was easy enough, and there's a satisfying crunch under Danny's hand when he does so. The buzzing is cut off, and Danny smiles with a sigh. Now there was no annoying noise to bother anyone, though left for Jason to stress over. Nothing left for Jason to stress over. Good. Jason needs to be happy. He's still hurt and needs sleep. Danny should make him another pillow nest. A nap sounds really good, actually. Maybe he'll join. Danny was too distracted to see the figure come up behind him. He didn't notice till he was looking down at his already healing stab wound. Someone has attacked him. Looking up, Danny's face shifts to an unimpressed expression. His fuzzy brain supplied that this must be one of the rogues. The man before him is dressed up like a sad excuse for a scarecrow. He's cursing and yelling at Danny, but Danny doesn't hear. He was more focused on the fact that he could feel Jason heading their way. He really didn't want Jason to worry. Jason was good. Jason didn't need that. Danny turned back to the Wizard of Oz knockoff, his mind made up. This guy needs to be dealt with. A sharp smile grows on his face as he suddenly grabs onto the rogue with both his hands, tilting his head in an owl-like way. Danny stares at the man, startled with his unnatural movements. Burning eyes see through the cheap mask. Danny's core tasting real fear. It growls with satisfaction. He lets his features bleed as he leans into the other man's space. Danny bites into the other's shoulder, the rogue screaming in pain, till Danny hears the sound of bone crunching in his mouth. Satisfied, Danny releases the injured man, grinning down at him, and he slumps over in pain. He keeps his grin as his form solidifies back into his more human form. The terror coming from the other is intoxicating. He turns as his core hums at Jason's arrival, wrapping itself around Jason's knot core. The taller man shudders, heart rate picking up. Jason is stressed? Why is Jason stressed? No, be stressed. Danny worked so hard to deal with the guy so Jason could relax. Danny makes his way over to the older man, nervously sending soothing through the bond. He pauses a moment to stand in front of Jason, taking in the other, letting his ice meld with Jason's heat. Then cautiously, Danny wraps his arms around his bond mate. The tension leaves Jason's shoulders immediately. Shaking his head, Jason brings one arm around Danny, using the other to make a phone call. Danny only really hears half of what is being said. Something about someone getting picked up and Jason taking Danny home to sleep off fear gas. Danny couldn't really pay attention. He just let himself cling to Jason, core humming away contentedly. After Jason ended his call, he said something to Danny, who couldn't help but giggle. He knew he replied, but his brain was so out of focus now. Jason just sighs. Somehow, he manages to pick Danny up while he was still clinging to him. Danny cuddles into the crook of Jason's neck, core humming even louder. Jason's nut core replies in similar fashion, and Danny lets himself drift from the land of the waking. Danny falls asleep, warm and content. Chapter 16. Nap. Summary. Danny takes a nap. Jason is stressed. Jason was in a predicament. He was currently trapped on his couch by a clingy, sleepy Meta. It wouldn't be so bad aside from the fact that his arm fell asleep about 30 minutes ago. That particular Meta seemed content not moving from his spot laying on top of the larger man. Danny nuzzled into his neck. Jason wasn't sure how he got in this situation. He had brought Danny to his safe house to give him the fear gas antidote and sleep it off. Nowhere in that plan was the possibility of Danny overpowering him factored in. Danny had his own plans, apparently, dragging him onto the couch where some of the pillow nest was still not cleaned up for cuddles. Worse, Jason hadn't gotten the chance to give Danny the antidote before getting trapped. Thankfully, he still had his phone and was able to text Dickie to ask him to stop by and help. Now, he just had to sit and wait. It wasn't that Jason minded the cuddling. He needed the rest, but Danny talked in his sleep. Jason was kept awake, fighting with the pits to not go kill something, because Danny's sleep talk was revealing something the background check never could. It felt like Jason was dying again. The broken whimpered begging and crying for his mom and dad to stop. That he was really their son. That he was still human. That he was still alive. That he could still feel. It filled Jason with a hatred that he thought was only saved for the Joker. Soft tears lightly soaked the shoulder of Jason's shirt as Danny clung to the distressed crime lord. Jason knew he wasn't supposed to hear any of this. That he shouldn't meddle. That Danny was doing his best to bury how much he was hurting, trying so hard to be strong and hide behind the mask of a smile. He was a bit like Dickie in a sense. Maybe that's why they both clicked right away. Jason's chest ached at the thought. His older brother had gone through a lot. They all had. Some wounds were still slowly trying to heal. Jason shifted to hold Danny better. The latter still mumbling sound asleep. Jason closed his eyes with a sigh. Guess they'll all just have to heal together. That was how Dick found them when he came through the front door. The older man froze for a moment at the scene before him, not saying a word until he saw Jason glaring at him, then shaking it off with a large smile. "Don't you two look comfortable?" And here Tim was worried. "You hated Danny," Dick teased in a light-hearted tone. Jason opted to roll his eyes at his brother's comment. "Har har. Can you please just get the antidote from the med kit? Danny has one hell of a death grip, and I need to move my arm before I lose it," Jason grumbled. Dick just laughed as he went to hunt down the med kit in the other room. If Danny's feeling up to it after, maybe we should move the movie night here, Dick suggested as he reappeared with the kit. No, I'm not going to have Timmy and Demon Brat snooping around my place. It's bad enough you show up whenever you feel like, Jason protested. Please, you know you love it. Besides, snooping is a love language in this family, Dick sang out while he prepped the antidote. Speaking of snooping, Jason hesitated for a moment. I might need you and Tim to dig a little deeper into Danny. Dick froze. What happened? Dick's face held concern masked with a neutral expression. Jason let out a deep sigh. He really didn't want to get the others involved, but they were better at hacking than he was. Danny talked in his sleep. Let's just say it's a lot worse than we speculated. Jason had to stop to take a breath. I think his parents were torturing him. Dick didn't say anything for a moment before resuming to prep the antidote, but his eyes held a fire that Jason recognized. I'll ask Babs to do it. Danny is Timmy's friend. He won't take it well, he finally said when he finished up. I want us to get all the information before we do anything, let alone if B gets involved. I'd like to avoid that. Something tells me that if he does, Danny will run. Jason huffed out in defeat. Okay, Jay. We'll do what we can. Neither said anything as Dick gave Danny the antidote. Danny frowned and shifted a little, but he did eventually let go for Jason to get out of the pillow nest, staying asleep all the while. Jason stood and stretched, rolling out his bad shoulder with a few pops, ignoring Dick's sad puppy face. The pits protested at the lack of contact with Danny, but Jason pushed past it. He walked himself over to the kitchenette to get the kettle going to make himself and Dick a snack. He was still really tired. Running off coffee and spite only got you so far. He really didn't know how Tim did it every day. PB&J crackers was going to have to do for now, not that Dick would complain. Jason still wasn't sure how the older man lived given his eating habits. Honestly, they all needed to do a better job taking care of themselves. His brother joined him once the food was finished, happily taking his mug of tea Jason handed him. The two snacked and talked about whatever till they heard Danny shift from his nest. Ugh, anyone get the number of the bus that hit me? Danny grumbled to no one in particular, slowly sitting up, clearly not registering his surroundings, his hair sticking out of every direction, cute bedhead, eyes still closed. Jason felt the pit swelling with an uncomfortable warmth at this sight. Morning, Sleeping Beauty, Jason teased in a flirtier tone than he meant. Danny let out a squawk as he fell from the couch. Jason chuckled as Danny scrambled to right himself. Dick just smiled gently. Danny sputtered out an attempt to defend himself, clearly embarrassed. Jason just shook his head. Get over here, Angel. Fear gas can be a rough calm down, and I make a mean hangover cure. Jason spoke with a warm smile as he turned on the stove, very much ignoring the look Dick was shooting him. Danny mumbled something to himself, but he did as he was told, plopping down on the bar stool, wrapped in Jason's blanket. Dick just sent him a soft smile as he handed Danny his own mug. Danny sipped slowly, watching Jason's back intently as he cooked. Jason felt nervous energy through the bond coming from Danny. Jason paused to focus, doing his best to project a comforting feeling back, sending Danny a smile over his shoulder. He was still not sure how all that worked, but he could feel Danny relax, the pits matching in energy. So Jason counts that as a win. Dick got Danny to open up and join in some small talk, letting Jason cook without worry. Soon food was in front of them, and Danny inhaled it greedily. As Danny ate, Dick stepped out to make a few calls. Jason assumed one would be to Babs, another to Tim, and maybe B if Dickie was feeling nice. He caved to letting the movie night happen here, but only if Danny was feeling up to it. He really didn't want Danny to deal with more than he could handle. The meta had already gone through so much. Now it was their job to lift the burden as much as they could. They'd take care of him. Jason would take care of him. The pit swelled in pride as Jason watched Danny eat, looking like he'd never eaten anything better in his life. Jason reveled in the feeling. Yeah, he could do this. And that wraps up chapter 16, my little makariki, which is another word for stars, but whatever. I'm trying something new. Also, hi, welcome back. I'm sorry.